The second reading is from Ephesians chapter 2. So then remember that at one time you Gentiles by birth, called the uncircumcision by those who are called the circumcision, a physical circumcision made in the flesh by human hands. Remember that you were at that time without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenant of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he is our peace. In his flesh he has made both groups into one, and has broken down the dividing wall, that is, the hostility between us. He has abolished the law with its commandments and ordinances, that he might create in himself one new humanity in place of the two, thus making peace, and might reconcile both groups to God in one body through the cross, thus putting to death that hostility through it. So he came and proclaimed peace to you who were far off, and peace to those who were near. For through him, both of us have access in one Spirit to the Father. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are citizens with the saints, and also members of the household of God, built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the cornerstone. In him, the whole structure is joined together and grows into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom you also are built together spiritually into a dwelling place for God. The word of the Lord.
So if you are over the age of 30, today's sermon will not only talk with the Bible, remind you that you are loved and forgiven, and move your hearts and minds to go out there and make a difference in the world, which I know is a very tall order for a sermon. It's actually not going to be that inspirational. But today's sermon also has the side benefit, or at least the potential, to improve your social media savvy and understanding. We could entitle this sermon, Instagramming for Jesus 101. Now, if you are under the age of 30, the first part of this sermon is probably going to be yesterday's news to you, and you may tell me everything that I got wrong about social media after church. So first, a little primer on social media, specifically the feature within the social media realm called stories. I am going to be projecting some images up here to help us along. And since we are in the visual age where they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, it seemed apropos to use visual images. And also, I think on social media, probably pictures are worth more than 1,000 words. Anyway, stories within the social media realm first came into vogue via a little app called Snapchat. We do not have time to go into all the nuances and differences between all different types of applications. But I did want to acknowledge that Snapchat originated the trend. The examples that we are going to be looking at today are from Instagram. For those of you who don't know, this is sort of what Instagram's platform looks like. It is entirely visually driven. Pictures and videos only. No long, wordy posts, no political news stories, no cafe delight recipes. Instagram allows you, through the use of a smartphone, to capture moments from your day. Add some cute images or special effects to enhance the picture, and filters, which are designed to improve, or in some cases humorize, the appearance of the subject. So the story feature on Instagram is up here where I have the arrow. So you'll see where it says your story. If I had a story up there, it would have a little round circle around it, and then you could click on it, and it would tell you something like this. So this is going to be how a story would be projected up there. As long as it works. The idea is that users can kind of tell a story about their entire day in micro moments through these stories. It's supposed to be used to give followers a brief look at what is interesting, or in many cases not so interesting, that a person is doing, and it's in the last 24 hours. The story feature disappears after 24 hours. Now at this point, I realize you are all probably sitting there very patiently, outwardly smiling and nodding, but inwardly wondering, what is her actual point with this? Instagram is definitely not in the Bible, and you are probably not that interested in learning how to put bunny ears on your selfies. Well, I promise you there is a point. So hang with me for just a few more minutes. I want to focus on a couple little aspects of the micro-story phenomenon. The first one is disappearing after 24 hours. So I went straight to the source for this one. I asked my 16-year-old son what he gets out of the story feature and what he thinks the purpose is. He basically said the reason the 24-hour story is appealing is because he can show it to people who follow him now. But it's not accessible to someone who might follow him next week or next year. It's a way of controlling the information. He also said that stories are generally not thought of as important information that one would want to keep forever on their page. A side note, as I was writing this, I realized a follower in cyberspace is someone who wants to look at your stories. Although it strikes me that a follower is also someone who tries to do and be like Jesus and wants to know his story. Anyway, the second thing I want to highlight before we actually get to the Jesus part of the sermon is filters. As I said before, filters enhance photos, providing a means to make the photo or video look better and often help smooth out aspects that you're not so fond of. It's why wrinkles fade away in the world of social media. It's why everybody has long, flirty eyelashes, and every sunset picture is imbued with color-popping beauty. It's also why the hashtag #NoFilter has become popular. It's a way of pushing back at the notion that we need to alter our appearance or the event to make it better in some way. Somewhere along the line, the people started realizing that the way they were presenting their lives and their stories wasn't entirely true. Okay, so all of this prep is to get us to Ephesians 2, which I know we hardly ever talk about the letters, but we're going to be talking about Ephesians 2, the story about the circumcised and the uncircumcised. Paul asked the hearers to remember their story. Remember they were Gentiles, aliens to a land and people. This is not the way they would choose to describe themselves now. He wants them to remember that they thought that they were out without hope and peace. He wants them to remember when they did not know God and his promises. They have forgotten these aspects of their stories, forgotten what it's like to be the outsider or the other, forgotten what it's like to be desperate for peace and hope. It's sort of as if the bubble disappeared from their newsfeed, erasing this truth from their minds, deeming that part of their story inconsequential, one that they really don't want to share with anyone else, lest it make them look less than or not deserving. An actual comment I read on Facebook this week about memories from past years popping up, and I did ask for permission to share this, mostly because I didn't know this person, and it was my eldest son's ex-girlfriend's friend who posted this. So don't worry, I'm not going to just share your social media comments in a sermon unless I ask. She said, when my memories pop up, I delete everything that's more than 3 years old because past me purposely tries to embarrass future. Which seems so very, very true. Our past may embarrass us. Our past may not be perfect, no matter how much we've tried to glam it up. But we don't get to choose what is part of the story and what isn't. The good, the bad, the ugly, it's all there. Paul reminds the early church, and frankly the modern day one too, of this. Life cannot be filtered out. See, for the early church, the question of how Gentiles could be welcomed as part of God's people was a retching debate. Jews and Gentiles were separated by a painful and often violent history, by different cultures and beliefs, and because of mutual hostility and distrust. Pretty ugly truth about humanity. In today's day and age, we can scarcely avoid the very concrete issues regarding whom we are willing to welcome and whom we are eager to exclude. This is what sin does to us. Paul reminded the church then and reminds the church today that sin divides us from one another. Our stories are peppered by our painful, strained, and hostile relationships. Christianity and Judaism, church and mosque, black and white, male and female, foreigner and citizen. It is an ugly truth, but it's one that we can't deny. However, the truth that intrigues me, that seems almost unbelievable, and is actually the inspiration for today's sermon, is verse 17. Now, I know you don't have verse numbers in your bulletin, but in Ephesians verse 17, it says, "So Jesus came and proclaimed peace to you who were far off, and peace to those who were near." He proclaimed peace. My first reaction to this is, it's not true. I mean, there is no peace. There is no oneness. There is no new humanity. Basically, it seems like Paul's gotten ahead of himself. But as I said, this is the verse that piqued my interest. In this letter to Ephesians, Paul is trying to help them view the entirety of their lives, not just a certain portion, the entirety of their lives through what I'm going to call the Jesus filter. Now, I know I said that life can't be filtered out, and it can't, but that's the super cool thing about the Jesus filter. It shows things as they actually are. See, when they thought there was no hope, there was. And when they thought that peace was impossible, it wasn't. And when they thought that they were beyond the grace of God, they weren't. Because of Jesus, their story and our stories are overlaid with the Jesus filter. And verse 17 is the Jesus filter. In an Instagram world, this is the filter that helps us see there is no them. There is only us. Jesus declares, in him there is peace. There is oneness. There is new life. It's not a someday possibility or a chapter yet to be written or a photo yet to be taken. It's an already. Jesus has already erased divisions between people. Jesus has already shown us the path to peace. Jesus has already said, "You are mine." I guess all of this is to get us to the question, would we see and experience the world and ourselves differently if we looked at life through the Jesus filter? If I assumed there is nothing that can divide you and me, not our political differences, not our religious differences, not our financial differences, if I assume that everyone I meet is worthy of God's love and grace and forgiveness, and if I assume there is hope for peace, even in the most dire of circumstances, I think, actually I know, that when I do this, I am more hopeful. And I don't know about you, but I could use some hope. Hope helps me to believe not only is anything possible, but it makes me realize that Paul was right. and it gives me confidence in my faith. Sometimes I feel like my gift to the church is that I doubt everything, which helps me wonder and it piques my curiosity. But sometimes I need solid ground to stand on. And it's good to see the world as Jesus sees it. A place filled with people who are worth giving his very life for. A place of possibility. A place that could become the new heaven. The cross tells the story this way. Jesus, the one person in history who could legitimately pull off placing himself above others, did not consider equality with God something to be exploited. But rather he committed his life to serving and healing others. And when the world railed against him, he submitted to the cross even to the point of death. For you, for me, for neighbors both far and near. That we might know the grace of hope, peace, and forgiveness. This is the filter through which we get to view our lives. Among all the rich legacies of faith, it is this one. And so may we take a stand of hope, in the name of God's justice and mercy and peace. This hope is what shapes us, morning by morning, into faithful servants of God. This is our story because it's Jesus' story. And through our stories, God's story is